So after all these dreams I had as a kid that were, the first one was cool, but they were all reoccurring and then they became nightmarish. Um, I guess I stopped dreaming for a while. At least I couldn't remember my dreams. Whether that's tied to MK Ultra or not, I couldn't say. It makes me wonder though. But in 2014, I wanted to take a trip. I wanted to go out, travel around Canada, hitchhiking. Thing is, I was dealing with depression for a long time and I had major anxiety. And I didn't train or anything before I left, but I had 2 big bags and I was preparing to go. And a friend of mine in Ottawa took part in a little ritual with me. It was tied to like the Exodus. Just that we had a meal together, and I let him know I was thinking of leaving, and I asked if he would indulge me and that we would eat the meal with our jackets on and says the staff in their hands and their shoes on, right? That they were ready to leave. And so he did. We didn't have staffs, but we did something to, you know, symbolize that. And the day came to leave, and I woke up without anxiety. The Lord took it from me literally because I didn't do anything to get rid of it, and there's no way I could have left if it was still there. So he literally took it away from me so that I could leave. And I got to North Bay. I left April Fool's Day, which was kind of symbolic, I was waiting for people to think that I was going to fail that day and that it was all a big joke. But I made it to North Bay, and by the time I got there, it was still like snow on the ground there, even though it was spring when I left, like Ottawa. And there was a blizzard warning when I got to North Bay. So for whatever reason, I checked to see if there was a shelter there, and there was the crisis center. And I told the staff that was doing the intake that I was, this wasn't a crisis. I just would like a place to crash for a night and, maybe wash my clothes or maybe have a shower or something. But they said because I was a transient, I could only stay one night. And then they said because it was a blizzard warning that it, technically qualified as a crisis. One other thing I wanted to note there was she said that one person was out 10 days and came back starving and dehydrated. And I don't know how you can do that unless you have no brains whatsoever. But I guess you didn't think to eat or drink anything. Anyway, back to the point. That night I stayed there, I had 2 dreams. I had a back-to-back nightmare. It was strange because the nightmare was my 2 daughters and my sister's daughter, and they were kids still, and in my dream they were like tormenting me or harassing me. And my big thing with kids or anybody really is respect. And so in the dream, despite showing anger and frustration, they wouldn't let up, and I was getting more and more agitated in my dream, right? Then I woke up from that miserable situation. I fell into a different dream where I was with my mother and her sister, my aunt. We were in the park in my hometown, and they were over at a picnic table. I was nearby, like I'm around, right? I'm not always right beside everybody, but I'm in the area. So anyways, I look over and I see my mom walking away from my aunt, and my aunt's still sitting at the picnic table, and that's weird because they're usually together if they're together, right? And so I started to follow after my mom to see where she was going. And long story short, she ended up going into, well, actually, I'll tell you about that middle part. So what ended up happening was I was leaving the park to go toward her, and she was heading toward the town hall, which is in my hometown near the museum. It's a block or so away from, maybe 2 blocks from the museum. Anyway, from the time I left the park to go and follow her, right, somehow I jumped to the other end of town, and I was now coming down the road the other way, and I was still following her somehow. So we changed position, coming from the other direction now, down the main drag, still towards the museum. And this guy somewhere beside me on the sidewalk says, you know, you can just teleport over there. But basically saying you can just, like, jump ahead. You don't have to walk and take the time it does to follow. You could just go there. And I didn't even look at the person. I said, you know, I said I'm fine or whatever. I'm just going up a block or something like that, right? So, interesting thing is I didn't even look at the person. I didn't even, like, look to see who it was. It could have been an angel for all I know, but... So, I get up to where my mom was. She goes into the museum. It's the last I saw of her, right? Now, this museum, when I was a kid, was already old, but in my dream, it was brand new. And so, I went inside the building, and she was nowhere to be seen. And inside the building was totally different than the outside. It was run down. There was clutter in the corners. There was, like, you know, insulation and broken debris from furniture and dirt and things in the corners, even though the outside of the building was brand new. And I couldn't find her. So when I woke up from that dream, the message I got was that she was going to pass, and it, you know, I didn't have long to see her if I wanted to see her before she died. And so at that point, we'd already been out of contact for a number of years because I left. You know, I had to go on my own. I couldn't be what other people wanted me to be anymore. I had to find out who I was, and so I left my family behind. And there was a situation that was a little scandalous, which I don't mind talking about at a future date if it comes, if it comes up, whatever. So there was some reason for me to also leave, but the underlying reason was that I just couldn't be what other people wanted me to be. I couldn't live up to people's expectations, which I'm not even sure what those are. I mean, you know, in Christ's case, Judas would have him create an army and destroy them by force rather than taking the peaceful road. So that's just a comparison, right? But the good news is I went out to the highway and I could have continued my journey to Thunder Bay, which was my plan. But then the sign said Ottawa, which was where I was from, you know, and I chose to go to Ottawa instead. And at that moment, I had peace in my spirit. So it wasn't that summer that I got back, but the following spring, I believe, I got a hold of my mother and got to see her. And then I think it was the very next spring that she passed. So, yeah, there's that dream. Dream number 4. Blessings, guys.